Vkran stood at the central podium, his elongated form casting shadows across the assembled delegates. His skin, pale blue and marked with the deep ridges of extreme age, caught the light from 1,000 bioluminescent orbs. He was 437 years old now, ancient even by Vren standards, and his voice carried the weight of those years. 50 years, he began, his words translated instantly into 46 different languages. 5 decades of uninterrupted peace and prosperity. 5 decades since we made the difficult decision that secured our future. The delegates listened in respectful silence. Most of them had not been alive for the event Vkran referenced, but all knew the story. The human question, the purge, the extinction of a species deemed too dangerous to coexist with the galactic order. We face difficult choices as stewards of civilization, Vkran continued. Sometimes, the needs of many must outweigh the existence of one. Humanity expanded too quickly, advanced too rapidly, threatened the stability we had spent millennia building. What we did was regrettable, yes, but necessary. In the back of the chamber, Ambassador Lira of the Vren delegation felt a familiar discomfort. She had been born the very year of the purge, had grown up on stories of the dangerous humans and their justified extinction. But lately, she had begun to wonder. The official history seemed too clean, too certain. She had requested access to the classified archives twice now, and twice been denied. High Shepherd Vkran was reaching his conclusion when the first alarm sounded. It started as a low vibration, barely perceptible, then grew into a shrieking wail that sent delegates scrambling from their seats. The holographic display at the center of the chamber flickered to life, showing a star map of Federation space. At the edge of known territory in the region surrounding the former colony of New Seattle, now called Thross Secundus, red markers were appearing, ships, hundreds of them. Admiral Thross of the Talgesh was the first to reach the command console. His massive frame, covered in the ceremonial scales of his rank, moved with surprising speed. His three-fingered hands danced across the controls, pulling up sensor data. "Impossible," he muttered, his dual voice chambers creating an eerie harmony. "These readings. They're showing a fleet, but there's nothing on thermal scans, nothing on mass detectors. They just appeared." "What do you mean, appeared?" Vkran demanded, his earlier composure cracking. "I mean exactly that, High Shepherd. One moment empty space, the next 200 warships, and they're moving toward Thross Secundus." The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted questions, demanded explanations, called for their security details. But Vkran stood frozen, a cold certainty settling into his ancient bones. He knew what this was. Somehow, impossibly, he knew. 3 billion kilometers away, aboard the dreadnought Remembrance, Admiral James Keller watched the blue-green sphere of Thross Secundus grow larger on the main display. He was 48 years old, lean and hardened by a lifetime of preparation. His dark hair was streaked with gray at the temples, and his eyes, the color of Earth's lost oceans, held no mercy. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Commander Patricia Huang said from the tactical station. She was younger than Keller by a decade, but her hands were steady as they moved across the weapons controls. Like everyone in the fleet, she had been born in the dark years after the purge, raised on stories of a home she had never seen. "Open a channel," Keller ordered. "All frequencies. I want every Talgesh on that world to hear this." The communications officer nodded, and Keller felt the familiar weight of command settle onto his shoulders. In the back of the bridge, secured in an observation chair, sat Dr. Elise Aldrin. At 83, she was the eldest survivor of the purge, the woman who had led 50,000 refugees into the dark and kept them alive long enough to build this fleet. Her hair was white as starlight, but her mind remained sharp as the day she had watched her husband die buying time for the evacuation. 50 years ago," Keller began, his voice broadcasting across space, "you came to this world and slaughtered everyone we loved. My mother died here. Commander Huang's parents died here. Every person on this fleet lost someone on this world you renamed as if we never existed." On Thross Secundus, alarms were sounding. The Talgesh Defense Fleet, 40 cruisers and twice that many support craft, scrambled to form a defensive perimeter. They were a proud warrior species, veterans of 100 conflicts. They did not run from threats. That pride would be their undoing. "We have not forgotten," Keller continued. "We have not forgiven. This is New Seattle, and we're taking it back." The human fleet opened fire. The weapons they unleashed had been developed in secret over 50 years, refined in the radiation-soaked laboratories of dead space, tested in the asteroid fields where humanity had hidden and grown strong. Kinetic harpoons moved at 20% light speed, punching through shields that had been designed to stop energy weapons. Plasmaweb missiles cascaded across multiple targets, each detonation spawning a dozen smaller warheads. Electromagnetic pulse bombs disabled entire squadrons in cascading waves of disruption. The Talgesh fought with honor and died with honor. Their weapons, conventional by Federation standards, barely scratched the shadow iron hulls of the human vessels. Ships that their sensors couldn't even detect until weapons lock was achieved were destroying them with mechanical precision. Admiral Thross, watching the battle from the Federation capital 600 light-years away, felt his blood run cold. He had commanded fleets for 200 years, had seen every type of warfare the galaxy had to offer. This was something new, something terrible. "They're not even taking damage," he whispered, watching as human ships moved through the Talgesh formations like predators through prey. How is this possible? In 47 minutes it was over. The entire Talgesh defense fleet was destroyed or disabled. But then came something unexpected, something that sent a ripple of confusion through the watching Federation observers. The human fleet did not fire on the planet. Instead, they broadcast an evacuation order. Every Talgesh civilian was given 6 hours to reach the planet's surface. The orbital stations and military installations would be destroyed, but no civilians would be harmed. "Attention Talgesh civilians," Keller's voice rang out across all channels. "We are not the Federation. We do not wage war on the innocent. You have 6 hours to evacuate all orbital facilities. After that, we will dismantle everything in orbit. You have 30 days to evacuate the planet entirely. After that, New Seattle returns to human control. If you remain, you will share the fate you gave our people." Elise Aldrin, watching from her chair on the Remembrance's bridge, felt tears on her weathered cheeks. This world had been her home once, a lifetime ago. She had raised her daughter here, had taught xenobiology at New Seattle University, had believed in a future where humans and aliens built something beautiful together. Then the Federation had come, and everything had burned. "Marcus," she whispered, speaking to a ghost 50 years dead, "we came back just like I promised." The human fleet dismantled the orbital infrastructure with surgical precision. Military satellites, weapons platforms, shipyards, all reduced to debris. But the evacuation ships were allowed to pass unmolested, carrying Talgesh families down to the planet's surface. When it was done, Keller gave the order and the fleet vanished. One moment they were there, the next, empty space. The Federation reinforcement fleet arrived 3 hours later to find nothing but wreckage and refugees. The hunt had begun. Over the following months, the pattern repeated across the former human colonies. The fleet would appear without warning, their null-point drives leaving no detectable signature. They would destroy military assets with overwhelming force, evacuate civilians, reclaim the world, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. At New Johannesburg, renamed Vren 7, the Federation tried to set an ambush. Admiral Thross himself commanded a fleet of 300 ships hidden in the system's dense asteroid belt, waiting for the humans to appear. But human intelligence was better. 50 years of studying the Federation, of intercepting their communications, of learning their tactics from the shadows. The human fleet detected the ambush before jumping in system. Instead of arriving at the planet, they materialized at the edge of the asteroid belt. What followed was a masterclass in unconventional warfare. The humans used the asteroids themselves as weapons, calculating trajectories with inhuman precision and hurling massive rocks at Federation ships with their tractor beams. Ships that tried to flee found their escape routes blocked by more accelerating asteroids. Ships that tried to hide found that shadow iron sensors could detect heat signatures through solid rock. Thross survived only because his flagship was positioned at the edge of the formation. He watched, helpless and humiliated, as his fleet was torn apart by rocks and iron and the cold mathematics of orbital mechanics. In the Federation Council chamber, panic was giving way to something darker: anger, shame, and in some, the first stirrings of guilt. Philosopher Prime Quellis of the Quorum called for negotiation. At 800 years old, he was the oldest being in the council, his crystalline body containing memories of the Federation's founding. He had voted for the purge 50 years ago, a decision that had haunted him ever since. "We must face what we have done," he said, his voice resonating through his crystal matrix. "We committed genocide. We cannot call it anything else. And now the survivors have returned, stronger than we imagined possible. If we continue this path, we will destroy ourselves." But Vkran would not hear it. "They are the threat we always knew they were. Look at what they've done: reclaimed 8 worlds in 6 months, destroyed fleets that should have overwhelmed them. We were right to fear them, we were right to act." Were we? The question came from an unexpected source: Ambassador Lira, standing in the gallery where junior diplomats were supposed to remain silent. "High Shepherd, I request access to the classified purge archives. I want to see the evidence that humanity fired first, that they were planning to attack us." "You do not have clearance for those files," Vkran snapped. "Then give it to me, or are you afraid of what I'll find?" The chamber fell silent. Quellis, seeing an opportunity, cast his vote. "I support Ambassador Torvin's request. The purge archives should be opened. We owe the truth to this generation." The vote was called. It was close, but it passed. Lira was granted access to the files that had been sealed for 50 years. What she found made her physically ill. There were no intercepted attack plans, no evidence of human aggression, no proof of any hostile intent whatsoever. Instead, she found endless council debates about humanity's dangerous rate of advancement and their unpredictable creativity. She found projections showing that humans might become the dominant species in the galaxy within 500 years if left unchecked. She found fear, nothing but fear, and genocide born from that fear. The worst were the videos from the purge itself, footage that had been classified as evidence of military necessity. She watched human colony ships broadcasting surrender signals while Federation vessels fired on them. She watched evacuation centers on Earth targeted deliberately. She watched her own grandfather, High Shepherd Vkran, giving the order to ensure complete termination. Lira spent 3 days in the archives. When she emerged, she went directly to the human fleet with a request for contact. To her surprise, they agreed to meet. The meeting took place on a Kesht station in neutral space. The Kesht, one of the 3 species who had voted against the purge, maintained strict neutrality but allowed their facilities to be used for diplomacy. Lira arrived with a security detail and a data core containing everything she had found. Admiral Keller arrived with Commander Huang and Dr. Elise Aldrin. The young Vren diplomat had prepared a speech about ending violence and finding peace. She never got to give it. "Both sides have suffered," she began. "If we can just—" "Both sides." Elise's voice cut through the room like a knife. Despite her age, despite the tremor in her hands, her presence filled the space. "Both sides. You murdered 8 billion of us. You hunted down our children. You erased our worlds and planted your flags on our graves. And now, because we've finally managed to hit back, you want to talk about both sides suffering." Lira's prepared speech died in her throat. I've seen the archives. I know what we did. I know it was wrong." "Do you?" Keller's voice was quieter than Elise's, but no less intense. "Do you really? Let me show you something." He activated a holographic display. Images filled the air between them. A young woman, Keller's mother, holding an infant on New Seattle days before the purge. Commander Huang's parents on their wedding day. Dr. Aldrin's husband, Captain Marcus Aldrin, recording a final message to his wife as his ship burned around him. "That's my father," Keller said, pointing to a man in a captain's uniform. "He died manning the evacuation center on New Seattle. He got 3,000 people onto ships before a Talgesh missile struck the building. He was 34 years old." More images. Children in classrooms. Scientists in laboratories. Farmers on Earth tending to crops. All dead now, all erased. "These are not statistics," Elise said softly. These are not acceptable losses in some grand strategic calculation. These were people, they had names, they had dreams, they had families who loved them and mourned them. Lira felt tears on her face, a rare thing for Vren who experienced emotion differently than humans. I brought the archives. I'm going to release them publicly. The Federation needs to know the truth. Truth. Elise laughed bitterly. The truth won't bring back the dead, but it's a start. The meeting lasted 4 hours. Lira shared everything she had found. Keller and Elise shared the story of the survivors, the desperate flight into dead space, the decades of struggle and survival, the deliberate choice to become strong enough to return but disciplined enough not to become monsters in the process. We could have killed every civilian on every world we've reclaimed, Keller said. We have the capability. We have the justification by the laws of war you yourselves established. But we chose not to. Do you know why? Because you're better than us, Lira whispered. No, because we refuse to become you. When Lira returned to the Federation capital, she went directly to the council chamber and uploaded the archives to the public database. Within hours, the truth was spreading across 47 worlds. The reaction was catastrophic for the Federation's carefully maintained image. Protests erupted on Vren Prime, on Talgesh homeworld, on Quorum. Young members of every species took to the streets demanding answers, demanding accountability. We committed genocide because we were afraid, one banner read. This is not the Federation we were promised. But not everyone was horrified. Admiral Thross, humiliated by his defeats and desperate to restore Talgesh honor, proposed a final solution to the council. Find their base, he demanded. Hunt them down in whatever dead space region they're hiding in. We were merciful before, we gave them quick deaths. This time we'll be thorough. We'll hunt down every last survivor and end this permanently. The vote was close, but it passed. The Federation committed 60% of its remaining military to the hunt. For 3 months they searched. They combed through dead space regions, investigated every anomaly, followed every lead. They found nothing. Human ghost protocols and sensor masking technology kept their bases hidden. Their null-point drives left no trails to follow. Meanwhile, the human fleet continued its campaign. 10 of the 12 colony worlds were now back in human hands. Admiral Thross, frustrated beyond measure, made a decision that would doom the Federation. If he couldn't find the humans, he would force them to reveal themselves. He ordered strikes against the 3 species who had voted against the Purge and had now declared their support for humanity: the Malarians, the Kesht, and the Yuvan. If you harbor sympathy for humanity, he announced, you will share their fate. The attacks were brutal and swift. Malarian trade stations were destroyed. Kesht diplomatic vessels were fired upon. Yuvan colony worlds were blockaded. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. The 3 species immediately seceded from the Federation. Other species, horrified by this expansion of violence, began to question their continued membership. The Federation, which had maintained peace for 3,000 years, was now in a civil war. Aboard the Remembrance, Admiral Keller convened his senior staff. The human fleet now numbered over 200 ships, crewed by 180,000 survivors and their descendants. They had allies now. The Malarians, Kesht, and Yuvan had offered support, including access to their shipyards and resources. We could end this, Commander Huang said, studying the strategic map. The Federation is fracturing. Their fleets are scattered, fighting on multiple fronts. We could push through to the core worlds, force a surrender. Or we could destroy them entirely, Captain David Torres added. He was young, only 30, born in the dark years. He had never seen Earth. They showed us no mercy. Why should we show them any? Elise Aldrin had been quiet throughout the meeting, but now she spoke. Because we are not them. All eyes turned to the old woman. She stood with difficulty, leaning on a cane, but her voice was strong. We survived because we refused to become them. We evacuated civilians from every world we reclaimed. We fought with honor when they fought with genocide. If we destroy the Federation now, massacre their people the way they massacred ours, we prove Vkran right. We prove that humanity was too dangerous to coexist with. We become the very thing they feared. So what do you propose? Keller asked quietly. We offer them what they never offered us, a choice. The human fleet appeared at Vren Prime, the Federation capital world, home to 14 billion Vren. Every ship in the defense fleet scrambled, expecting an attack, but the humans held their fire. Instead, Admiral Keller broadcast a message across every channel, every frequency, every communications network in Federation space. 50 years ago, you decided we were too dangerous to live. You murdered 8 billion of my people. You hunted us across the stars. You thought you'd erased us. You were wrong. We've spent 5 decades surviving, building, and preparing. We could destroy you now. Your Federation is crumbling, your fleets are scattered, and your people are turning against you. We have the capability to finish what you started, but we won't, because we are not you. Instead, we offer you a choice, the choice you never gave us. Acknowledge what you did. Classify the purge as genocide in your historical records. Return Earth and our colony worlds to human control. Pay reparations for 50 years of stolen resources. Do this and we'll join the Federation as equals. We'll share our technology. We'll help rebuild the stability you claim to value. Refuse and we leave. We'll take our 12 worlds and we'll never speak to you again. But know this, the next time you come for us, we won't be refugees in converted freighters. We'll be ready. And we'll remember, you have 1 week to decide. The council chamber was packed when the vote was called. Every species had sent representatives, and for the first time in Federation history, the vote was public. No secret sessions, no classified decisions. High Shepherd Vkran, old and bitter, argued against acceptance. If we admit guilt, we admit we were wrong. The Federation will never recover from this shame. Philosopher Prime Quellis, even older, responded with words that rang through the crystal halls. The Federation is already dead if it cannot admit its mistakes. I was there. I voted for the purge. I carry that shame every day. We all do. Perhaps it's time we faced it. Ambassador Lira, representing a new generation of Vren, spoke last. I studied human history when we occupied Earth. They have a saying, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. They're giving us a chance to remember, to be better. I say we take it. The vote was called, species by species. The decision was recorded. Some voted quickly. Others deliberated for hours, but slowly, inevitably, the tally grew. 31 species voted to accept humanity's terms. 12 voted to reject. 4 abstained. The Federation agreed to humanity's ultimatum. 5 years passed. Earth was restored to human control, though it would never be what it was. The returning survivors found a world that had been strip-mined and terraformed, forests replaced with Vren agricultural complexes, oceans depleted to feed Federation expansion. But it was home. The 12 colony worlds were returned. At each one, massive memorials were erected, naming every person lost in the purge. 8 billion names, carved in stone that would outlast empires. The Federation paid reparations. Ships full of resources, technology, and manufacturing equipment arrived monthly. It could never compensate for what was lost, but it was acknowledgement. It was justice of a sort. Dr. Elise Aldrin died peacefully on Earth, in a hospital overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. Her children and grandchildren surrounded her, along with every surviving member of the original refugee fleet. Her funeral was attended by representatives from across the Federation, including Ambassador Lira. The epitaph on her memorial read, "She remembered so we could return." Admiral James Keller retired from military service and accepted a position as humanity's ambassador to the Federation Council. His first official act was to propose the Remembrance Coalition, a political bloc dedicated to ensuring the purge was never forgotten and never repeated. It passed with overwhelming support. High Shepherd Vkran was forced into retirement, his reputation destroyed by the revelations of his role in the genocide. He lived out his final years in isolation, a cautionary tale about the dangers of fear-driven leadership. The galaxy slowly healed. Trade routes reopened. Cultural exchanges resumed. Young humans and young Vren attended universities together, learning each other's histories, understanding the weight of the past. It was not easy. There were protests, incidents, moments when old hatreds threatened to reignite. But the Remembrance Day ceremonies, held annually on Earth and broadcast across Federation space, served as a constant reminder of what happened when fear conquered wisdom. On the 55th anniversary of the purge, 5 years after humanity's return, Admiral Keller stood before the memorial wall on Earth. The wall stretched for kilometers, 8 billion names etched in black stone. Millions of people had gathered, humans and aliens together, to commemorate the victims. A young Vkran child, no more than 10 years old, approached Keller. She had come with her parents, part of a new generation born after the revelations, raised to understand the truth of what their grandparents had done. "Admiral Keller," the child asked in heavily accented English, "why did they do it? Why did they kill all those people?" Keller knelt down to the child's level, his aged knees protesting. He was 68 now, his hair completely gray, but his eyes were still ocean blue. "Because they were afraid," he said softly. "They saw how strong we were becoming, and they were scared of what we might do, so they struck first." "But you came back," the child said, her crystalline eyes wide. "You could have killed them all. My teacher said your fleet was strong enough. Why didn't you?" Keller was quiet for a long moment, remembering his mother's face, remembering New Seattle burning, remembering Elise Aldrin's tears on the bridge of the remembrance, remembering the moment they chose mercy over vengeance. "Because being strong doesn't mean using all your strength," he finally said. "Real power is knowing when not to strike. We proved we were strong enough to survive. Then we proved we were wise enough to show mercy. That's what makes us human." The child nodded, processing this. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small white flower, a lily, the symbol of remembrance in Vkran culture. She walked to the memorial wall and placed it gently at its base, beside a million others. Above them, human and alien ships moved through Earth's orbit, not as conquerors or conquered, but as partners. The scars of the purge would never fully heal. The 8 billion names on the wall would never be forgotten. But from that remembrance, from that acknowledgement of terrible mistakes, something new was growing. Not forgiveness. Some crimes were too great for that. But perhaps slowly understanding. And from understanding, the possibility of a future where fear did not dictate fate. Admiral Keller placed his own flower at the wall, his hand trembling slightly. He touched the stone where his mother's name was carved, and his father's, and the names of 30,000 people who had died at New Seattle. "We came back," he whispered, echoing Elise's promise from so long ago. "And we brought mercy with us." The sun set over Earth, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The memorial service continued into the evening, voices of 100 species singing songs of remembrance in 100 different languages. And high above, the stars waited, full of possibility, full of danger, full of the infinite capacity for both destruction and redemption that defined all sentient life. Humanity had returned to the galaxy, not as the conquerors the Federation had feared, and not as the victims they had tried to create, but as something the galaxy needed to understand, a species that could survive the worst, fight back with devastating effectiveness, and still choose to build rather than destroy. The human story was far from over. But it would be written in their own words now, on their own terms, with the weight of 8 billion martyrs and 180,000 survivors standing as testament to what happens when fear meets determination, when genocide meets resilience, when the presumed extinct return with both justice and mercy in their hearts. They had thought humans were extinct. They were wrong, and the galaxy would never make that mistake again.